All right, at this point, we've gone through the groundwork. We've talked about data viz best practices, gone into inserting, customizing, formatting charts and templates in Excel. Now it's time for the good stuff. Now it's time to actually do some deep dives into each of these chart types. So we're going to kick things off with bar and column charts, one of the most common chart options in Excel. And these are commonly used for things like comparing numerical data across categories. And the only real difference between a bar and a column is the orientation. So bar charts tend to do a really good job at categorical comparisons, and column charts can show the same thing or also introduce some element of time series trending. So data by category, by month, by year, by quarter, whatever it might be. So some examples of data sets that you might visualize with bar or column charts include things like total sales by product type, population by different countries, or revenue by department by quarter. So the pro tip here, anytime you're viewing data by multiple categories or multiple subcategories, for instance, by month, by genre, or by department, by quarter, you need to use stacked or clustered bars or columns. That allows you to group by those subcategories or compare multiple metrics. And I'll show you an example of that in just a second. Second pro tip, you can use custom formatting rules to actually color code bars or columns dynamically based on their values. Now that's actually a lot trickier to do than it sounds, and it's one of our next level demos towards the end of the course, so stay tuned for that. With that, let's dive into Excel and actually get our hands dirty. Okay, once you've opened up the Excel workbook, go ahead and click on the first orange tab, the bar and column chart tab, and let's see what data we have to play with. Looks like we've got ticket sales here, organized by genre and by month. We also have aggregate values in column N, which is total sales by genre, as well as row 7, which is total sales by month. And this is a great data set to use for something like a bar or column chart because it's categorical data with a number of different dimensions that we can visualize. So why don't we start with a simple bar chart. I'll go into Insert. Top left is my bar and column options. I'm going to do a 2D bar. You'll notice that Excel didn't really have a best guess for me, so it just left the visualization blank. That's okay, it just means that we'll insert the series ourselves. So I'll right click, choose Select Data. I'm going to add a series, and for the name, let's call this Sales by Genre, and the values will just be those totals in cells N3 through N6. So press OK. And once I press OK, you can see that it populated the values, but the axis labels are kind of just default 1, 2, 3, 4 values. So I can edit those labels right here. Click Edit. Now the axis label range is just the name of genres in A3 through A6. I press OK, and there you go, it's applied them. So once I hit OK again, I'm all set. That's my basic bar chart. Now it just comes down to formatting as you see fit. So I'll choose the x-axis. Let's just reduce that text size a bit so it's more readable. Let's make our labels bold, increase the size to make them pop a little bit. Then we can go into the Format Data series, just reduce the gap width a little bit. And this is totally up to you how you want to format things. So there you go. This does a really good job showing relative sales volume by genre. So it's immediately clear that comedies drive the most sales, followed by thrillers, then romance, and last but not least, documentaries. So let's do a similar exercise, but work with a column chart to show the totals by month. So same thing, I'm going to insert, this time a 2D column. I'll right click, select my data, add a series. We'll call this one sales by month. And the values here will just be B7 through M7. And again, same exact case, it just dropped in default values for my axis labels, so I can edit and just select the months, since those are the labels that I want to appear along my x-axis. So, okay, great. I'll just do a little formatting, reduce the size of my X labels. I'll make my Y-axis bold, and there you go. So there's a basic column chart. Now if we want to get a little bit more fancy and we want to show the actual crosstab data, in other words, the data by genre, by month, that's where we can start playing with things like clustered or stacked columns or bars. So one kind of demo that I want to show you, if I try to insert the chart the same way, so let's just do a column and go through that same process I just did. Select the data, add a series, and let's say we call it sales by month and genre. If I try to select values in a two-dimensional array like this, Excel will be unhappy. It's going to tell me that the reference is not valid and that it needs to be a single cell, row, or column. So what I have to do is cancel out, and if I were to do it manually, I would need to add one series at a time. So the series name would be comedy for the first. The values would be the comedy sales by month. Okay, add another one where the name is thriller and the values are the thriller sales by month. And as I do this, you can see that it's adding, these additional series. And I'll do documentary sales by month. So it's clustering them as I'm adding each series manually, but there's a better way. So I'm going to delete this and show you the easier way, which is starting with the selection in place. Now if I go to insert clustered column, it knows what I'm trying to show. So it's recognized the label headers and axis labels based on the original selection. So there you go. This is a perfect example of a clustered column chart, which now shows two elements or two dimensions of the data, which are sales by category or by genre by month. So I can give it a chart title here, sales by genre and month. Let's be consistent. There we go. And again, I can format this however I choose. I can kind of drag things, reposition things. I'll make the y-axis bold again. And now here's what's great is that this is a really nice way to tell the story that I'm trying to tell, which is how did ticket sales evolve throughout the year by different genres. But there are some other options that I have to visualize this. And if I go into my chart tools, change the chart type, one option is right here, the stacked column. So if I select stacked column, now what it's showing me is the height of the entire column includes total sales for the month, and the individual components of that column show how those sales are distributed by genre. So this tells kind of two interesting pictures. It gives you the sense of total ticket sales, which as you can see mirrors the single column chart that we had just built, but it also adds that element of, okay, what's the composition of those sales? How many of the sales were driven by comedy versus thriller versus documentary, etc. So a really nice, powerful visual. And then the final option here, again, I can go into change chart type, is the 100% stacked column, which does the same thing, except it just normalizes all of the volume to 100%, and it shows the composition by genre based on a percentage. So what percentage of ticket sales in January did comedy make up versus thriller, and so on and so forth. So there you go. Good example of when and how to use bar and column charts in Excel.